as we get started, I'm just going to share my screen to show you kind of what the setup is for today. And again, just to kind of show you how I typically set up my screen. I'm a left to right linear kind of person. So I tend to set my screen up left to right. So I have my syllabus always on the left so I can figure out where I am. And then I have the competencies always next to that, typically. And for us, I have our discussion next. And then I have set up my resources for tonight. I have the deck we're going to look at, standards. And then I ended up deciding to do multiple windows of the content that we're going to use. So I have one window open to session 3 because we're going to use that. And I have one window open to session 4 because we're going to use that. And then I have my module, which I have linked in the course already, but I have that open because I know we're going to use that. What else I got? I've got the agenda. I've got the templates. And I think that's probably it for tonight. I have a couple other Core Tools tabs open to allow myself to navigate if I want to search for something and I don't want to wreck my tab order. So I always open Core Tools again so that I can search for things as needed. And I typically put that on the right to remind myself that it's not my designated tab, I guess. That's my and yeah, so let's start this week. We have a smaller group, so we'll be able to sort of hear from everybody. And let's just go around, and why doesn't everybody share something? I'm going to stop here so I can see you all. Oh, and Lori is here, looks like. Lori, welcome. Maybe by phone, or maybe she's driving. But so let's just start, and let's just describe something exciting that happened in your week, and let's hear how things have been. We see that Deborah's not driving. We see that Karen's not in school, but some other things must have happened that are good. So let's start. How about you, Amanda? Let's start with you.
Okay. I was talking about earlier, my kids I have 2 different classes in 2 different modules right now. And so my one group of kids is using solar concentrators to cook food. So they had to research a bunch on solar concentrators and then decide what kind they wanted to make. And we did all this research and all these different little mini tasks. And yesterday we just started building. So that was really, really, really exciting to just see them. They had to hand in design briefs. So they turned in these design briefs to me, and to actually see them like building things is really, really fun. And then my other class is doing, they're building solar panels for semi-skilled workers in underprivileged countries. And they just got started on that too. So it's just exciting to kind of see all this research that we've been doing actually turning into something for them.
That is really exciting. That's amazing. All right.
What do you teach?
I teach a clean energy class.
Oh, cool.
And what grade levels, Amanda?
I teach freshmen to seniors.
Mm-hmm.
And I have about 5 IEP kids this year that are taking it. And it's a college credit class too. It's a CTE. They can leave the class with a certificate and college credit.
Very cool.
Pretty exciting. All right, Karen, how about you? Something exciting that happened this week?
Well, it's actually been kind of a less exciting week. I will say that I am an 8th grade science teacher, and I've always been, I'm always an advocate for putting more literacy in the other content standards, the other content classes. And I posted this, but I don't know, I'm a geek, a science geek, former engineer. That's what I do. Okay. I'm not a writing or reading teacher, except I am. Right. The whole thing about the 3 standards, picking 3 standards and having the stool with the reading standard the content standard and the writing standard and be able to put them all together in a very purposeful way was kind of an epiphany for me. I know you guys are all ELA and reading and writing.
No, I think it's an epiphany for a lot of people. I think it's an epiphany for a lot of people.
You know, as Suzanne knows, I was told to take this class on the 7th at noontime. And so I'm always feeling a little bit behind, but I'm just telling you, I'm really enjoying it. Was just, wow, I could make writing more purposeful, and I could, my brain starts going everywhere. I do curriculum design. I'm a teacher, but we don't have coaches. We just design curriculum on our own. I don't want to say that it's ad hoc. It's really by the standards. We do an excellent job in our content standards, but nobody really integrates the literacy as purposely as we could. And I'm just seeing like all these possibilities about getting our kids reading and writing in every single class and doing more amazing things than just the standard content area.
So Karen, you're going to find good friends here to connect to, like Amanda, for example, who, if you're a science person, I think you already heard her describe, but also we have a lot of Battelle science resources in our system. So
yeah, I'm actually a new science teacher too. I taught math for most of my life.
All right, so Anne Marie, how about you?
Hi, I'm coming to everyone today from Providence. I'm in a hotel here. I've been working in Providence this week, and it's been really exciting to be working in this high school. And today I saw a debate, their first debate of the year, go on in this particular class. And it was just so awesome to see these kids get riled up and excited about an issue and using their evidence. And there was just this one boy who was tongue-tied, but he was just, bound and determined he was going to be able to say what he had to say. And he finally was able to do it. He was so proud of himself, and it was, I was really excited, and I'm really quite pleased to be working in this high school because they have a lot of really great things happening in it, and I'm happy to see that because I've been in too many high schools that have been pretty dead, and so this has some life to it, and the teachers are really excited. So that's my spiel for today.
That's good. Abby, how about you?
Well, this week is homecoming week, so it's been kind of crazy. We've had spirit days every day, and tomorrow we have a pep rally at 6 a.m. So I'm going straight from here to bed to try to get ready for that.
Wow.
I don't think, how many kids are going to be peppy at 6 a.m.?
I don't know. I'm not sure who scheduled that, but it should be interesting. Yeah.
You might not have very many behavior problems, though.
Hopefully not. Maybe everybody will just be asleep.
Okay. Deborah, how about you?
I took over some work in South Carolina. That's where I was this week. And there was a coach that had been a little hostile, I think more frustrated than hostile, but it came across hostile. And her teachers were very frustrated with the process, with the LDC process. And so I sat with them at the time that I had and talked about powerful literacy practices and talked about the stool, the 3. And by the time I left, she was literally hugging me and was saying, I am so excited. Thank you so much for this time. This is exactly what we needed. And I was like, I literally almost want to cry right now because I love when I taught to see those aha moments with my students. But to see an aha moment with with 2 teachers and a coach who had spent a year being frustrated, I felt like I gave aha moments to students and teachers and coaches. I walked out like goosebumpy and excited, and I'm just thrilled. I'm thrilled for them.
This is the best. We should just do this.
It is fun to share this stuff, isn't it?
It is. Nephi, how about you?
Today I learned that I get to go to Florida like 2 weeks from now and go to Lake, which is
Yay!
Yay.
it's kind of, I don't know, flying into Florida after a hurricane I've never done before. So,
True. That's true. It's going to be
but I get to see teachers working with LDC live, it'll be fun.
so fun. All right, Monique, do you have anything exciting to report?
Well, I working with one of my LA schools. It's a brand new school, and they were all feeling very frustrated because they were trying to log into this, and it's all virtual. And we were 45 minutes into the meeting, and I knew we weren't going to get done on time. And so I was trying to figure out what to do, to make sure we wrapped up on time. And I found a way to get us to where at least they could move forward. And I said, okay, guys, I really appreciate it. You've worked hard. I see that it's time for you to go. And they go, no, wait. We've got more time. And I could not, we spent another 15 minutes catching up and getting them where they needed to be on their time. And if you've worked with LA schools, that is very unusual. I was so excited. And they were going, okay, so what do we do next? When can we communicate with you? I've already gotten 2 emails from 2 different teachers. I mean, I'm just feeling like, yay! So I'm excited. I'm hopeful that this will continue with this school.
That is super exciting. All right, my exciting thing for the week is that one of the places where we work in a district in Mississippi, I heard this really, we spent a week there last week doing curriculum work where we're basically mapping out for their scope and sequence in every course, grades 6 through 12, they're going to have 3 modules in each course. So every student will be guaranteed a certain type of work in every grade level in the entire district, which is a really exciting project. But the thing that really excited me was when Nicole, who's our person who's working down there, said, what the coach said as we were working was that she's been seeing how much she's been getting out of these type of experiences, blended foundations and the deep dives and stuff. And why couldn't she do that in her district so she doesn't have to travel everywhere anymore and she can reach so many more people so much more quickly? And that was just really great because for all of us, we're trying to exponentially increase our touch points. And if you can't spend all your time in your car like Deborah does, then it's really hard, right? Super hard. So how do we think about scaling across the system, especially when they're doing this cool thing where every teacher is going to be involved with all of these things? Anyway, that was just really fun and exciting. And the other thing I will say also is that Nephi, I believe, I've seen Nephi writing a task. Is this the first task you've written, Nephi?
Yes.
Yay! This is great. This is the best. So that's why this is going to be so fun. All right. So. And
Lori, are you able to talk to us?
Yes, just for a minute. Hey, everybody. So I'm in a hotel room in DC and have a bunch of colleagues with me. So that's exciting. So there are people I don't always get to work with when we all live in different places at SREB. And other than that, I'm just going to be honest. This week, my son was on break, so we were at the beach. So I hate to everybody.
Yeah.
To him growing up in the community where I was principal, all my friends are teachers. So it was a big house of teachers and teenagers. So we did a lot of good conversating around literacy and mathematics. So it doesn't leave you, it's in your blood. So that was exciting to talk to people about the work we're doing 6 weeks into the school year and already on break. But thank you. I'm going to be getting off in probably about 10 or 15 minutes to go start an evening meeting. So, but thank you for accommodating me through the phone instead of through Zoom tonight.
Absolutely. I'm glad you're here. Any way we can get together is the best. All right, so I'm going to share my screen again and show a few things around. I want to just remind us that I'm glad that people have gotten so energized by this notion of how standards work together and the triangle of focus standards. And so I want to remind you, as one of the core competencies that we work on all the time, are these two, really. One is recognizing how a set of standards work, meet expectations from external benchmarks, which basically means whatever kind of standards you use in your area. So seeing how those work together, and then being able to select that cluster that's going to do that work together. So we're going to continue tonight with thinking about focus standards, and have you select your focus standards, or maybe you already have, for your own task. And so that's our goal coming out of tonight, is to sort of show you the process and give you some additional things to think about as you're working on your own standards. The other sort of tip, we're going to start some tips every week that I want to show you, is something that you can do in Core Tools. And it's useful when you're doing this kind of design work, like you might try out one task, and you might try another task. And anyway, it's called a snapshot. It's a really useful strategy for freezing your thinking and then being able to return to it. So this is my module. This is a module I've been working on for a long time, actually, and it seems to be becoming more relevant. It's about Eleanor Roosevelt's speech at the 1948 United Nations. But in any event, this is my module. And so if I go up to here to this great red button, which is one of my best Core Tools friends, I can drop it down and show, it gives me options of things I can do. One of those things I can do is create a snapshot. So I'm just going to click that and say create. And then what happens is, now if you haven't seen this navigation, you have this little arrow over here. Now I can see that my snapshot is here. See this number down on the left, snapshots? I have one of them. So if I go in and make some changes in my task, and I decide to do something totally different and shake it up a little bit, and I want to save that, I can now always go back and take a look at what I had done before. I have my first version, right? And then anytime you make a snapshot that I can make another one, and that way I have two. And then next week, when I'm forgot where I came from, I can go back and take a look. So this has been really interesting for people to sort of capture your thinking along the way. It's also super useful for reflection, like at the end of teaching, you want to go back and see where you started and see how things changed, and think about it for next time. So anyway, it's a useful tool and tip. All right, so let's move into our work for tonight. We're really gonna add some layers to the notion of focus standards. I believe that in your work, the pre-work for this for tonight was going in and selecting a template from one of those collections. And I know we read a lot about how people explored the starter task collection, and the some people spoke about the Rankin collection, Stevenson collection. My takeaway from this conversation is that hopefully you've discovered the power of what we think we have in our library, which is there are not many reasons to start from scratch anymore. There's so much good thinking that teachers have done and are collected. So why start from scratch? Start with something that you know or are interested in and work from there. So, the purpose of those collections is to help you do that, and the purpose of our library and our system is to help you do that, so you don't have to start from scratch. So, just as a reminder, the three-legged stool, it resonates. I heard a couple people mention how much it resonates. And the thing about it that's critical is trying to figure out how the standards make each other better, right? Like how they articulate the kind of thinking in a better or more robust or more specific or more sophisticated way. And that's what makes clusters work. And I sort of think of them as puzzle pieces. Well, I sort of think of all modules as puzzle pieces, and I'm just trying to fit the pieces in that fit. And once they fit really well, they kind of click, like that satisfying puzzle feeling or sound when you get the piece in there just right. So that's a lot of the work that happens with focus standards. You try it out, you see if it works. Does it say what you're trying to say? Does it engender the kind of thinking you want? And that's when you know it really kind of fits together. So when you are starting to fill out the blanks of that task and really try to fill it out, you're going to enter it from different points. You may start with a text that you already have. You may start with a template that you already know you want to choose. You may start with certain content or a product. But no matter what your impetus is, selecting those focus standards up front is the critical part. And the reason is that the whole module is designed to support those focus standards. You're going to teach them explicitly, and you're going to assess them explicitly through your instruction and in your final writing the students do. So having that base solid allows you to figure out the alignment in your instruction. So that's why these focus standards always happen at the beginning of the choices that you make as you design. So in the chat, I'm going to ask you to think about, like, as you thought about your focus standards, like we heard from Karen, some ahas about focus standards, and I'm curious if there are additional ahas that you may have thought of as you thought about how these standards fit together. I can't see the chat for some reason. So I'm wondering what else you thought about when you thought about these standards. So take a minute and write into the chat. What were your learnings or wonderings?
I don't know if you've gotten to where you can see the chat, Suzanne, but I love everybody talking about the connections and the alignment and how our standards are connected to each other. And I think that's where the stool really sings to me. We have a purpose for reading and writing, and that is the content, to learn the content.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is why it's really interesting to hear science teachers and social studies teachers and ELA teachers think about, like, what is my discipline? What is the disciplinary content, right? And then how do I use the other standards to articulate the ways in which my students will explore that disciplinary content, basically, or interact with it. It's cool. All right, so Monique, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so you can take it.
Okay. So when you're thinking about your, and I just, as you're looking at your focus standards, and you guys chose your focus standards in your think and practice section, right, with the star graphic, and you're thinking, you're thinking about the text, you're thinking about each of those pieces. But what I'd love for you guys to share in the chat, so we can all see what's going on with everybody, is what grade level are you working with? How is that impacting what you're doing? Was there a particular, I'm posting in the chat, but what grade level are you focusing on? Is there discipline? What 3 focus standards maybe will you use to drive your design? And how do those 3 standards work together? Because that stool is really, when we think about it, and I'm going to share my screen while I'm doing this. Knowing that stool's there, but also we're gonna take a deeper dive into the standards in just a minute. And I want you guys to see what everybody else is doing, because one thing I'd love for everybody to think about is, if there's somebody in this group you could partner with. And we'll put something in Teach, so that since there's several people who couldn't make it tonight, we'll see if we can put some of this in Teach. And it'd be great to have a thought partner as you work through these steps. Designing on your own, as we all know, can be a challenge. Talking to somebody about it, working together, and finding a teammate in this is one way to really build your skills. So let's take a minute, everybody post and look at what's being said in the chat. And now I've lost my chat, Suzanne.
Go up to your bar at the top, it'll pop down.
Yeah, I see it. Thanks. I'm seeing that I'm not really sure what I'm doing. That's great. because that's what we're doing, is developing that skill set. So if you guys want to keep on posting, and we'll look at that in a minute, and just see if we can find maybe somebody you want to work with or someone you can share and talk over as you're going through this process. But the next thing we wanted to do is look at our focus standards and really look at the progression of them. And for those of you that are not familiar with this particular document that I'm showing, if you go into the resources section on LDC, and it'll come up here, and you scroll down to the college and career readiness standards, and then you go to this guide here to CCRS that compares each standard across grade levels. You will come up with this fabulous booklet that has all of the various standards broken down into a progression.
Mm-hmm.
And Suzanne showed this earlier, and it's one of the pieces I almost always have up when I'm working with schools or working in systems, even if they don't follow the CCRS or the Common Core if they're on college and career readiness, because it helps me think about what each grade level is really expected to do. So talking about that, I'd like for you guys to take a quick look at the progression here. We have both literature and informational, and we're all focusing on informational, but I'd really like you to take a couple of minutes and just look at this one, R3, and see what you notice about the progression from kindergarten to high school, going down the literature line, going down the informational line. What do you see that is a common thread? And then what's unique about each standard at the grade level? So take a few minutes to look at that. I'm seeing a lot of interesting comments about how they're all about analyzing character development, but it gets more complex as you go. So what I'd like you to do now is partner up, and I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to partner you guys based on the Brady Bunch screen we have here.
I'm writing them in right now.
Oh, good. Okay. All right. Suzanne's going to partner you guys up then. And I'm going to go back to sharing the screen so that we can look at these standards as you partner up. And I posted the question in the chat that I would like you to think about as you go through that. But just a quick chat. What are you noticing about the standards that brings new insight to your own work? How might you change your mental markers after you look at those grade level standards? And looking at this R3 particularly for a single grade level, potentially the one you're thinking about designing for, how does it change from the grade level above yours and below yours? So take a minute to chat with your partner and about that.
Is there anybody without a partner? I think everybody's good. So Karen, in your drop down on your chat, select the name of your partner, and then it'll be a private rather than to everybody.
Yeah, I got it. It was a mistake.
No, that's all right. I do it all the time. Which is good because I don't usually cuss in my chat.
Okay, so does anyone have anything to share out? Something that came up in your discussion that really spoke to you, or that you think the group would really benefit from hearing?
Well, I just said that I think as you move down, students have to think a lot more critically about what they're reading, and about what they're going to write about. And so they can't just spew information out. They actually have to dig deeper and defend themselves and analyze it and think more deeply. And I think that that's not something that we really ask students to do often. We often focus on recall and, you know, the easier stuff, but this really forces kids to think more deeply as you move down.
Thank you, Andy. Yeah, anyone else? Because that same thought always goes in my head as I look at these, is the depth that grows.
Monique, I feel like I see that it begins to describe and compare, and then it goes into analyzing, but it analyzes the different elements from like the story and then the lines and dialogue and the characters and then the author's choices in a way that build on one another in a scaffolded way that
Mhm.
brings it to the highest level.
Deborah, you bring up a great point. I mean, when you think about that, it's so critical to know what the students were expected to do before they came to your classroom, and then
Right.
where are they expected to go after they leave your classroom. You know, and so knowing that progression chart is really important no matter where you are. And if you're working as a coach, kind of having a basic idea. Remember that exercise we did last week where we were looking at having those key mental markers? Knowing those mental markers for the main, you know, for the anchor standards, but also kind of having an idea of how this progression works. And if you're working with a teacher, that's why I frequently have this document in I have a paper copy when I'm in schools, and if I'm working virtually, I have this copy up so that I can show them and say, okay, let's look at where your students should have, what they should have gotten before they came to your classroom. Where are they going next? So
Right.
it's just, it's such a key. And you mentioned talking about how it went from describing to analyzing, right?
Mhm.
Well, those cognitive demands are pretty critical as we move forward, correct? And that's
Yeah.
what we're looking at. We're digging into what are the cognitive demands, and that's kind of what template are our students going to be, you know, what are we going to be using as our template to get our students writing. So just real quickly, read this section in session 4, and I'm going to have it up on my screen. I think I can get most of it. Yeah, I can get most of it on there in case you're not following along. But one thing I'd also like to point out is up here at the top, if you're in LDC Core Tools, there's always a direction up here. So if you're following along with someone on a virtual screen and you kind of aren't real sure where they are, you can look up at this top bar and see, I've been in Learn, I went to Design Assignments, IC number 1, Session 4. So take a minute to read the screen. So hopefully you've all had a chance to read through that, and we're really thinking about how our templates, our focus standards. I love what Suzanne said, the cognitive demand choice is kind of another leg in the stool. It's another piece that's critical to move forward. So does a template work for a particular task? And within the Learn tab, you'll see these exercises where you're asked a question and you get to choose yes or no as your answer. And so as you read through this, if you're in your coursework, I'd love for you to do this in the coursework. If not, we'll kind of do it together and show you the pop-up. But think about this task template and let us know what you think about this task template. Does it fit?
You want us to verbally speak up?
Yeah. Does anybody want to tell me which one to click? Which one do you think I should click on this?
Click yes.
But yes?
Yes.
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 We good? Everybody agree? All right. I'm going to be contrary and click no.
Oh.
Only to show you guys something. When I submit, look what happens. Number one, it tells me it's not correct, but it also gives me a great explanation about why it's not correct. And kind of gives me the information I need to rethink my answer. And then, because I'm a perfectionist and it would bother me to no end to have an incorrect answer in my, you know, that'll bug me. I'll have to figure out a way to get rid of that. I can retake it. And then I can go in and go, oh, nope, it's right. I'm going to get it right. And the cool thing, if you get it right, it still gives you that explanation and explains why you made the right decision. Because, you know, sometimes you vacillate. You're like, I think it's yes, but I'm not positive. And you get it right and it says correct, and you don't even get any backup on any feedback on that. So to me, that is one of the great tools that's available for a coach, but also for teachers who are working through this. They get immediate feedback and an immediate explanation. And So hopefully that will really help out. So please go through, and if you see any of these click marks in your lesson, in the coursework, click through them and let us know how that's working. And I think now, Suzanne, I'm going to hand it back to you and let you move forward from there.
Okay, sounds good. So one of the things I want to revisit is the I really did think of that, and I love that image of the glue. I'm really going to kind of think about that a little bit, because the interesting thing about the templates is that those cognitive demands are selected in that way because they are sort of universally present across different standards, across different grade levels. So they articulate a type of work that happens across different standards. So the glue notion is super interesting, right? Because I'm sort of thinking of the glue right underneath that top of that story, kind of pulling it all together. So then the thing to think about as you select, you're heading into writing all of the components of your task. And what that really means is you can make decisions about how your task is going to work. And some of that is going to be around the standards, but then there are these other decisions that get made that you'll play around with in your thinking as you think about what your task is going to be. So just as a reminder, a teaching task is written for a writing in response to reading or research exercise. So that can be like what Amanda described, where her students are building, and you know what, I'm not even going to say it right, but some kind of conductors, and then they're going to write some kind of, I don't know, what is your product, Amanda, for the work they're doing now?
They are going to defend why their solar concentrator is the best solar concentrator.
Got it. But you mentioned they wrote a design brief.
Yep, they have to write a design brief.
Mm-hmm. So whether it's that kind of disciplinary product or whatever the product is, the students are reading or researching, synthesizing a lot of information, and then communicating it in some written form with maybe some oral formats as well, but certainly a written product by the end. So your task, if you've selected the 1 text 1 week or the 2 text 1 week, I noticed somebody who said they selected 2 texts 1 week. Someone's doing that.
I did.
Is that you? Okay.
Yeah, me, Karen.
Yeah, Karen. So, and I did notice in a lot of the conversation that the notion of how do you actually keep that kind of exercise, writing in response to reading, short, so it's not like a 6-week unit. It's not a giant project. So I'm hoping that the module template you selected sort of helps you see that. But the thing I want to point out is here are the choices you end up that are coming for you between this session and next, because for next time you're going to finish filling out the blanks of your task. So here are the choices that you make. You certainly make choices about text, right? There's a blank here for whatever text it is you're reading. So you're going to make a choice about a writing product. What's the appropriate disciplinary writing product to do the kind of thinking and communication your students will do? What is the cognitive demand in what they're doing, and how does that sort of fit with the kind of work you want them doing? What is your content standard? What is your reading focus standard? And then how are you ensuring that it's there'll be multiple responses, or there's not one answer basically to the question? The kids are all going to produce the same exact paper. So those are sort of critical elements of LDC thinking. So I wanted to show you, we did some color coding last time of tasks for standards. You can also think about the blanks, like where are your standards going to appear in your task? How does it all get put together? And here's an example of what that might look like in the ELA discipline, which is the literature discipline, of course. So you have to decide on the text. A critical question is, can the students do the kind of work you're asking them to do with that text? Does the text fit? And all of those kinds of questions. But I did want to show you one of these I'll show a couple that are science, because I think I've heard a couple science people, and then also Nephi, you're writing the coding task. So in the disciplines of social studies and science, the type of work may look different. but the literacy work is part of it, right? So part of the standard here is in the RI3, for example, is the multi-step process standard. So this lab experiment that they do, they're going to follow a multi-step process. The content standard is all around the chemical makeup of antacids and how those chemicals neutralize acid in the body. And then the cognitive demand is embedded in the kind of work, right? They're going to do a lab experiment in which they compare how antacids neutralize stomach acid. And so that comparison sort of fits really naturally with the kind of work that they're going to be doing. So this template was chosen to be able to integrate or hold together the glue, I guess, as Anne Marie said, which I now have to say all the time just to get it into my schema for this particular science task. There are multiple science tasks in our system. I don't know if anybody out there is doing social studies, so if you are, you can be my partner because I'm working on that. But if you're in the science areas, definitely take a look at the way that the science tasks are put together. This is a Battelle task. Amanda, you may recognize this. You may have worked on this. I don't know.
Yeah.
Did you?
Yep. Yeah.
Did you? Yeah. So this is a really interesting task about mealworm ecosystems, and there are actually some videos that show the kids doing
that.
Yeah. So you can see that, you know, obviously you don't, I certainly don't write with these colors in mind, but as I'm writing, I can use this notion of color organizing to help me make sure, like, you know, does my text selection match the purpose of my task? In this one, it's a design task. So the students, their texts are RFPs. They're going to be responding to an RFP. So that's the text that they read, right? And they're going to be doing research as their engagement. No, that's not the right color, isn't it? Well, in any event, they're writing a design report, which actually is exactly right because they are responding to an RFP. So that's how you think about putting those pieces together to make sure they kind of fit. So for next time, what we're going to ask you to do is go through session 4 and, you know, choose that template if you haven't already. Think about that cognitive demand. Does it fit the purpose of your task? And then you're going to link your module, which I'll show you here is really easy to do. I have my module linked. You just use these links down below. The reason to do that is because then we can give each other feedback once we start doing feedbacking and partners. And plus it makes it really easy because now I can work on my module. I can work on my module while I'm in here, so I don't need to bounce back and forth between my directions and then what I'm actually working on. I can see all my content and my module at the same time. So you'll make some decisions about that, and then once you get into the next session, session 5, that's where those other blanks come to be. So choosing the text, choosing your writing product, making sure your content standard lines up. And in this one, as you choose, you can decide, like, do I need some help deciding how to think about what text I'm using, or how long my module is going to take, or what would my product be? And you can use this resource to kind of drop down and get some additional information. So this is you'll see here, this is the full circle from where we started, which is you were color coding other people's tasks, and then we suggest, well, you know, go back and color code your own and see if it worked out. Can you see how you put those pieces together? And then you'll finish this session with a fully completed task. So that's the work ahead. And I'm going to make sure I jump into the chat to see. So I'm going to ask you in the chat now to think about, like, what are your questions? What are things that you're not sure about in terms of writing your task? Or if you have started writing your task, what are your questions around that? We'll take a few minutes and just go ahead and write together.
While y'all are thinking on kind of what your questions might be, I posted something in the chat about how you can search for your task template by cognitive demand. And Suzanne, you said you had an additional LDC core tools up.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to walk through that real quickly, or do you want to?
Are you talking about searching in the library for demands?
Well, yeah, that would be great too. I was thinking when you're in the task template section too, when you're editing your task template, you can also search by demand.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to go to my module because that's quicker.
Oh, yeah, perfect.
So, yeah, here's in a module. So what Monique means is that when you're working in a module and you want to change your template, all right, so here's the one caveat. If you change your template, it won't remember what you've already written. So I usually cut and paste that. And I often use the overview section to put in my, I need to go back to my other snapshot because it's not a very good, I put gobbledygook in it. Let me go back to my actual, yeah. So I'll often use the overview to pop my task in. And then when you go to change your template, you can select a different one. So in the example that we looked at in here, and I don't know how closely everybody was able to read it, but what session is this? I need to be in 4. You know, this, there's this section here about selecting your template and does it work? And this was in the section that we read, yeah. And so, you know, you start off thinking that you're doing this R9, which is the multi-text research standard. So you'll be comparing what either information or authors' approaches across multiple texts. So you pick IE5, that compare template, and you think you're like on the way. And then you realize, once I add my content standard, it's not really, the comparing is not with like major cognitive thinking I need them to do. I really need them to do evaluating. So I might change to this evaluation template. So the way to do that is to go in here and change my task template, and I can search either through the whole collection, or I can search here, right, and pull just the evaluation templates. And there's only one because it's only argumentative. So if I wanted to search both choices, so for example, compare, let's see what happens there. I get both the argumentative and informational options, and I can, you know, you can also search by mode. So that's the way you can decide if you need a new template in your module. And then you can edit again. I could pull down my content from here into here, and then I can, you know, just continue editing that way. So I hope that's what you meant. And that takes us to out of time. This is a big work week. We're not going to have posting in Teams this week, in Teaching Channel this week, because everybody's going to be, there's a, you know, a significant work to do on your task. So we figure that's the work you should be focused on this week. So as we leave here today, I hope you've seen some navigation, gotten some more ideas about those standards and how to really think about them as you write your task. So again, we'll close with our one word whip, but so what is the word you leave here with, or word or phrase or sentiment that you leave here with tonight? All right, so next week, we're gonna begin our work on, you know, individual work on tasks and then working together on those tasks. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm excited to read your tasks, and you know what, I think I might do a workshop task, a new task too. So anyway, I'm excited about that. I love it once we start actually diving into our actual work. So looking forward to that next week. I hope you all have a great week.
Really enjoyed it. Thanks, guys.